Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our last Hawkeye and Parent Family webinar for the 2016-2017 academic year. I can hardly believe that we're finally at the end. So my name is Danielle Martinez, and I work in the Office of Academic Support and Retention, and will be your moderator for today's webinar. If you're unfamiliar with the series, they're hosted the first Friday of each month from noon to 1. And our next year's series will be posted soon on the Parent and Family website, which is parents.uiowa.edu and under resources. Our goal is to provide you with up-to-date information that might apply to your students' experience here at the University of Iowa. We know that you play a vital role in their success, and so we hope that we can provide a platform for us to provide you with the resources and tools to support your student in their journey here. If you can't attend every live webinar, we do record them and post them later both on our website and on YouTube. So for more information, future topics, or to sign up for next year's series, please visit parents.uiowa.edu and click on the Resources tab. So our webinar today is managing the summer transition. With the end of the school year approaching, we feel like it's a good time to sort of talk about what might next steps be for your students and how to deal with the, once again, of transitioning from their first, second, or third year here at the university. We're very lucky to have our wonderful campus partner with us today, Dr. Simone Young, who is a staff psychologist from our University Counseling Service. She'll share information on how to support your student as they transition to the summer. So welcome, Simone, and thanks for joining us.
Sure, thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon, everyone. Really am excited to be speaking with you all today, and this is a good gist of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what are some concerns that your students may have in anticipating their move home. We're going to talk about some impacts it may have on students as well as you as the parent as well. And we're going to identify some concrete strategies to assist with making that transition a bit more smooth. And we're going to talk about resources here on campus, so specifically how we can provide support to your son or daughter within the University Counseling Service, more specifically as they return to school in the fall. So just in general, transitions are just hard because they just are for a myriad of reasons, but most specifically because different expectations exist, so maybe even opposite, that's possible as well. Changes in schedules occur and new norms are typically established. So these are some of the concerns that your students may be fretting about, so to speak, when they return home. And so being back at home means going back to old rules. And so typically students live under independence when they're here in the college realm. And so transitioning back home to live under a parent's roof can be a bit of a culture shock. Secondly, back at home means that people will likely judge students for how long they may choose to stay in bed. So if they're lazy or if they're tired, it can be hard to discriminate on those two experiences. Missing obligations or just catching up. It could be some concerns students may actually have. Being back at home means that students may feel obligated to ask if you can permit them to go places. So where is the middle ground between independence, feeling like students have a tracking device on them, and common courtesy? It could be difficult for students to have some clear boundaries in that respect. Being back at home may mean that students can ask permission to invite others over into your space. Being back at home may mean that students may find that people who they have befriended and come close to on campus are miles away. So friends that they're connected to are away, and they can sometimes feel lonely and get bored. Being back at home means to sometimes get the question of what are you doing with your life? And so those types of questions of concerning what are you doing with your life could be intimidating for students, particularly if they don't have a clear sense of direction of what they want to do. And here are some additional other concerns that students may have as well. So students may be concerned that parents will still treat them as if they are a child, that parents will tell them what to do, that parents will get into their business. Students may have a feeling they can't be themselves, that they are expected to play a particular role that they're not comfortable with within the family. Dividing their time between friends, family, and themselves could be difficult. Friends who knew them in high school, because time changes how people are. People who they were close to in high school are totally different than who they are now, and so that could be difficult for students to try to navigate. It's also possible for students to be concerned about their family and them driving them nuts as well. There's a lot, so conflict is a totally normal experience, and students nonetheless can be concerned about their ability to handle conflict, to manage conflict, and communication difficulties that just arise in families. Students may be concerned about relationship problems that parents may have between them and being put in the middle of those problems. Students may be concerned of how to split up time between bouncing back and forth between multiple families, if that is an area of concern. Students may also be concerned about having the same religious values or having differing values that they once had growing up in family. Students may have different perspectives on how they see the world, and so they could be a little apprehensive of their new perspectives and viewpoints will be accepted by family members. I was going to initially say at the extreme end, but I stopped myself because I think that these are really normative problems and concerns in families. Students may be concerned about families having serious problems such as substance abuse, mental illness, and financial problems. I think that's really normative, as well as having someone in the family who has abused them in some type of way. So these are all concerns that are potential for students to be a little bit on edge and uncertain about. So my advice to students would be to talk to families before they come home for the summer. And so specifically in asking about and trying to iron out expectations, I would encourage students to ask about family expectations, talk about how they perceive themselves, how they perceive their new quote-unquote adult role, and try to negotiate some rules within that. It's good to plan activities, so plan activities to keep yourselves entertained, and also to divide your time in between family, friends, and yourself so that you have some time to relax. It's good to be creative and change the way that you deal with problems. And so don't try to change or control your family members. It's good to find some common ground with people who are different from you. And it's good to choose your battles carefully, knowing when to call a truce and knowing when it's good to take a time out. Keep in mind that your family members have also changed too, as you have been away from them for the past year. Try to communicate more effectively with your family. So sharing information, expressing your feelings appropriately, setting limits, knowing your own limits, staying calm, listening before speaking, thinking before speaking first, and being respectful, being aware of all those important factors such as your tone of voice, your body posture, using I statements. All those can really go a long way in being able to express yourself more effectively. And also take time to potentially process or share your experience with someone that you may trust, such as a friend, neighbor, partner, or counselor. And so in addition to students and making sure that we cover some tips that could be really beneficial, making their transition more smooth for parents, thinking about ways that you can get more prepared is equally valuable as well. And so it's very common and it's very okay to have mixed feelings. So potentially there is some excitement as well as some dread for students returning home over the summertime. And so the first thing that I would recommend is to discuss how long of a window your kid gets to decompress. And so when students arrive back home, maybe avoid quote unquote nagging conversations on day one. And so making his favorite food or watching her favorite movie with her could be great ways to break the ice. And also honor that things have changed over the past year and that each one of you have grown and changed. And so oftentimes 18 and 19-year-olds need to go through a period of distancing and individuation. And this is necessary to be able to comfortably reconnect with you on more even terms. And so there's often a need for them to recreate themselves, so to speak, and try to figure out a balance of how they're going to fit in their families. And so you did this when you were younger, and this is very much a process that your students will also embark upon as well. And so when your kid last lived with you, it is likely that the living conditions were under high school type rules, but now he or she has been on his or her own for a year, and it's likely that these expectations to come home and operate in an independent manner may look differently now because they have acted in an independent fashion since they've been in college, and so it's good to be mindful and aware of that. And you've probably grown accustomed to monitoring that one kid, and so it's time to think about how to make your summer living arrangements even more livable or even pleasurable. These are 5 great questions to ask yourself. And so are my parenting strategies moving towards independence, balancing freedom and responsibility, motivated primarily by fear or love, providing guidance without enabling, and part of an ongoing dialogue? So these are some recommendations that I would provide to all of you. So first of all, I would encourage you to let your students sleep. So sleep as much as they want, at least within the first few days. And so oftentimes students are sleep deprived from just by virtue of living in the residence hall. So late nights and just noise just makes the living conditions different than living at home. And crankiness isn't fun for anyone, so it could be good for the adjustment period just to be more smooth, just to let them sleep. And so staying out to the wee hours of the morning sounds awful to adults who have to get up early in the morning the next day and don't take naps, but to kids, this is the norm in college. And so I would recommend, secondly, to have lots of good food in the house. And so this is 100 times better than the stuff that they eat at college. And so this could be good leverage. So if you can slide food under the door, especially during the first few days, so much the better. And so fresh baked goods are definitely a premium in that respect. Third, I would recommend to don't be completely available. And so it puts too much pressure on your student if they think that they need to be with you every minute of the day, and don't feel guilty about it either. So they probably want to take some time just to chill out, just to relax, maybe see some friends, just walk around the house and hang out in the pantry. And did I mention giving them space? And so this is so hard since you might have not seen them in months. And it goes against the nature of being a parent, but you have to do it in order to keep the peace. And so try not to speak too much or ask too many questions. You'll be amazed at the snippets of information that come your way when least expected. The last point, or second to the last point that I would recommend, is spoil them. So spoil them, but don't do everything for them. So don't underestimate the thrill of letting them get their own snacks from the refrigerator. Helping them out too much can make them feel like a guest in their own home. Last but not least, when the time is right, sneak in lots of hugs and kisses. And so after some adjustment time, both on the part of your student as well as you as the parent as well, it's time to re-enter negotiations. So it's not just your kid that has to do the compromising. Here are some recommendations that I'll provide to you in order to make that process a little bit more smooth. And so how to negotiate with your student, your son or daughter, as they return home. And so write down everything that you can think of that might become a problem or an annoyance. So don't ignore the little things. So for example, you like to have actual milk in the gallon jug. So have your kid do the same as well. One of the first things to do when they return home is to sit down together and co-create a list that can work for everyone. So eventually bring the whole family in on this discussion, and so it's good to mold the younger ones as well. So don't get caught up in making a list of demands, quote unquote list of demands that your kid must follow. Believe it or not, your kids are now firmly in their young adulthood and have become accustomed to be treated as such. To have a healthy, growing relationship with your son or daughter, you may need to take a hard look at who they are now. And so they have been functioning independently as an adult, required to live up to, abide by expectations by many different parties here on campus, from professors, from instructors, from administrators. And so keeping in light that, viewing them as a young adult could make things easier on your part, so to speak, as well as their part as well. Here are some possible topics that may likely need to be addressed. It's just to give you some food for thought. And so first is the cleanliness, that word, cleanliness of the house. So maybe shared spaces need to be neat, but he or she can do what they want to do in their room as long as it won't grow mold. So discuss division of labor. So you should not become his or her personal laundress or housekeeper. They've been really taking care of their own responsibilities to varying degrees over the past year. And so if they're preparing to live in an apartment for next year, these skills become incredibly more important. So food is another great item to negotiate. And so you've become accustomed to not feeding an 18-year-old. Discuss what you'll buy and what he or she might be responsible for purchasing. Curfew. So maybe try out not having one, but minimally come to an agreement about knowing where he or she is and knowing when they're expected to come back home. For alcohol, so uncompromising on drinking and driving for obvious reasons, and also deciding according to your shared values and reality about what this will look like in your household for your student. Appearance, so his hair is his hair, but can he make himself presentable when necessary? Something that can be a discussable item on your agenda. Money and working. So how is money managed? Is getting a summer job a responsible type of facet for your student to try to undertake? And so maybe it's a good type of recommendation for your student, for you to encourage your student to try to find a job on his or her own and decide what you'll provide and what type of things can they provide on their own. And so discuss the difference between need and want, and if they're going to be living in an apartment for next year, begin identifying the life skills necessary and a reality check of the expense of certain items. Sleeping, so wasting half of the day, quote unquote, wasting half of the day sleeping is going to happen, and so it's good to be mindful and be cautious and be aware of what type of recommendations that you may have on sleeping. I think within the first few days, making sure that you make some room for your son or daughter to catch up on sleep is definitely something that can be put in place. And I would also recommend to not function as their alarm clock. And so I would encourage you, for as long as you can, try to lay off meeting his or her responsibilities. And so they've been getting up on their own for a year, and they're fully capable of being able to function on when they need to attend to certain things. And so I recommend writing down your list of agreements, whatever they may be. These are just the recommendations that I provided, and signing off on it. And so anticipate, expect for conflict to happen, and planning a meeting 7 to 10 days after these agreements may have been kind of sort of not abided by is maybe not a good strategy. So maybe giving some wiggle room for your son or daughter to make some mistakes, and trying to see maybe if your son or daughter is maybe slipping up with not following through with expectations that were initially agreed upon, coming back to that within a matter of a couple of weeks. So Sydney Harris says this quote, "So the two words information and communication are often interchangeable but signify quite different things. Information is giving out, communication is getting through. Be clear and succinct when you need to give feedback." So when you're talking to your son or daughter, please, like for example, please don't use the end of the toilet paper and not replace the roll. An extra roll is under the sink. Replace it now, please. Just say period. After that, walk away. Don't go on, since it will likely lead to an argument and morph into an ancient one about when she failed to lock up her bike and it got stolen when she was 10 years old. So practice reflective parenting rather than reactive parenting. I'll say that again. Practice reflective parenting rather than reactive parenting. All revolves around communication. So empathy, listening, turn-taking, judgment-free, these are really great skills to practice. So with respect to the counseling center, with the University Counseling Center, counseling services are offered with no additional charge to students who are currently enrolled at the university. So these are a compilation of the services that we offer. We offer consultations, both group and individual counseling, case management. All these services are for free. And so consultations, those are the initial point of contact that we engage in with students when students first want to come to set up services within our agency. They set up consultations to meet with a therapist and counselor. And so after meeting with this therapist and counselor, addressing their concerns, students can, in conjunction with collaborating with the psychologist, the therapist, the counselor, decide if they would be interested in pursuing ongoing counseling services, so the individual and group counseling. If they want to be referred to a counselor in the community, in the case of being referred to a social worker who works in-house for case management purposes, or they may decide to have their concerns addressed in the one-shot deal of just having a consultation. So a likely scenario and example I can imagine, if a student is experiencing test anxiety, students may decide to just get some quick and dirty tips for a consultation, and so that could be a one-shot deal. And if they were wanting to get some more in-depth experiences with trying to dig underneath to explore maybe more of what those concerns look like and how they manifest, ongoing services would be more than appropriate. We can definitely be beneficial to helping out your son or daughter in that respect. And so over the course of the academic year, we see about 2,000 students for a wide range of mental health concerns. So from anxiety and depression, which are super common, adjustment difficulties and concerns, relationship problems and issues. Those are some of the types of concerns that we see within our offices. And within our agency, we have psychologists, social workers, doctoral trainees, a lot of individuals that are geared towards being well-trained to meet the needs of students who attend school here on campus. We really want to make sure that we provide support at all levels to make sure that they are academically successful. And so in addition to meeting with students and being more than happy to do that, we're happy to consult with you as well. And so you can feel free to call us up whenever you choose to do that and lay out your concerns that you may have with your student. However, students must make their own appointments. They must initiate the process of making their own appointments if they want to be seen in-house within the counseling center, but you're more than welcome to call us at any time. We're more than happy to be receptive to receiving your phone calls and addressing your concerns if they arise with your student. And so we are located on the west side of the river in the West Lawn building. So it's the same building as the Student Health and Wellness, right next to the College of Nursing. And I'd like to add to that as well, we will also be opening an east side location in the Old Capitol. So the east side location of campus is really the hub of action for campus, so to speak. It's where a lot of departments and classes the students attend are located, and we really want to make sure that we are totally responsive to students, and so we're going to be located on this side of campus as well. We also have counselors that are embedded counselors that are located within the residence halls, as well as in the department of, not the department, but the College of Athletics. So I jokingly like to say that we have the mothership that's located in the west side of campus. We have tentacles spread out over campus to make sure that we can provide a consistent source of support. So this is our website. Feel free to plug into it and explore more of our resources so you can see what we offer. We also have a Facebook and Twitter, so feel free to get plugged in that respect if you're interested.
Thanks so much, Dr. Young, for all the great information and tips and strategies on how to support students through the summer transition and into their next academic year. We're now going to move to the question and answer portion of our webinar. So please remember that we have lots of folks attending the webinar, and so Dr. Young is unable to answer questions about the specifics of your student's experience, but can provide more general information that might be helpful in guiding your student. So if you have a question, type it into the question box on the side. Then I'll read the question out loud so that all the participants can hear, and then Dr. Simone Young will answer the question. If we're unable to get your question answered during the webinar, we'll follow up with you via email to make sure that we get those answered. So it looks like we already have a question coming in. So the first question is about students who are maybe really excited to come home, and they've already started talking about rules of communication. So, sorry, the question's a little long. So, you know, not having to worry about curfew or telling the parent where they are all at times. And so the parent is a little scared or terrified is the word, on how to continue the conversation in a positive way. So sharing expectations while the fear of that the student will be distant or get angry, what do they do next? So they've started the conversation, one is at one opposing, and then one is sort of like, let's do this. For sure. So how do you come to the mutual understanding?
For sure. I think that is a great question. And so I think you prefaced the question with saying that your student has been excited to initiate these conversations about expectations, and I really am happy to hear that. And so I think that initially, on my end, I would recommend for you to make sure that you positively reinforce that behavior. And so when I say positive reinforcement, I think that making sure that you openly are really warm, inviting, expressive, to being really proud of the fact that your student has been able to communicate those expectations. I think that is huge that your son or daughter take the lead in that, and so positively reinforcing and that, just validating that heavily and really making sure that I would encourage you to be open about this area, about being concerned about stepping on their toes if and when conflicts may arise with regard to having differing opinions of curfew. And so I'd say that because I think that honesty is the best policy in that respect. I think that you may be unaware as well that your son or daughter may also have reservations that they may be intimidated to vocalize with you. And so I think that honesty is the best policy, making sure that face-to-face you have a conversation with them about your concerns that you may have. And then I would say within that, let your son or daughter know that you will be periodically checking in with them throughout the summertime to make sure that you're able to tweak any expectations should they need. And once again, just like support the fact that your son or daughter took the lead and being able to have that conversation with you early on before the semester has ended. And so positive reinforcement, being open and honest about your fears and your concerns, and inviting the student to express his or her own will be the recommendation that I provide.
Great, thank you. So this next question is a little bit more about grief. So a student who has had like a high school friend pass away, and so parents and family members are worried about adjusting when they come back home and that person might not be there. And so suggestions on supporting students sort of through the grief process.
Oh, for sure. Well, I think that yeah, grief is a really normative process and experience, and I think that it could be difficult for 18, 19, 20-year-old to process the experiences of what it's like to lose someone that they went to high school with, given that age and that developmental period. And so I think that early on, in terms of like some of the guidelines that I recommended before, and so letting students gradually get back into the flow of things within your household, and so letting them sleep if they need to be, if they need to be in a state of relaxation, checking in on them with providing like baked goods, making sure that they know that you're available, but you're also willing to give them space just to be sad and just to have that space that they may need. I think that if you see your student engaging in a quote-unquote prolonged state of grief, and so I say prolonged, and if it's more than like if you notice your student engaging in isolating behavior, so they're isolating themselves, if they're not spending time with other family members doing like shared family outings in the summertime, and if they're not doing activities or not resuming activities within, I'd say within a couple weeks time frame, and if they're still engaging in similar behaviors that they did initially when returning home, of like remaining in their room, staying to themselves, I'd say then I would be more concerned to get more involved. And so I think just having a conversation with your student about their feelings could be good. Just letting them know that it's okay to feel however they feel could be really beneficial. Encouraging them to get reconnected to things that they like and that they enjoy and that are important, that they're passionate about, could be a second recommendation that I provide. Making sure that that you let the student know that they can be willing to talk to you and another trusted family member would be great. And like I was saying, with the trend, if you notice, like beyond a couple weeks, if students are still engaging in the same behaviors of like isolating themselves, not doing activities that they typically enjoy doing, may not be eating, so having appetite changes and difficulties, may not be sleeping, I think that I would consider getting your student connected to counseling.
So that looks like that might be all the questions that we have for today, which is great. But also, just to let folks know that if you do have additional questions, you can email them to us at uc-retention@uiowa.edu for a response from a university staff member. And once again, as Dr. Young mentioned, University Counseling Services can always do phone consultations with parents who might have questions and need more general answers. So we'll go ahead and wrap up our last webinar of this academic year, and we'll be taking a bit of a break with our webinars, but we'll be back in August with a brand new series, and you can go ahead and sign up online, so stay tuned for the schedule and check out parents.uiowa.edu for ongoing information to support you and your students. We hope you have a great rest of your summer with your students or whatever you might be doing, and don't forget, on Iowa, go Hawks.